Gratitude, day 2. This is Todd, and I'm just a regular dude walking in the Word. Thanks for joining with us today as we continue our journey through the book of Mark. Today, we're going to be reading from Mark 7, verses 1 through 13. And this is, Jesus is dealing with washing your hands. All right? Verse 1 says this: The Pharisees and some of the teachers of the law who had come from Jerusalem gathered around Jesus and saw some of his disciples eating food with hands that were defiled, that is, unwashed. Let me give you I'm going to just stop a lot through as we read through this here. The Pharisees were coming from Jerusalem, and they were, Jesus was in Galilee now. Now, as we read through this, we don't think about, the distance, but it's about 100 miles away. So these Pharisees had come to Jesus, kind of wanting to check him out and testing him. And they had made the journey of 100 miles. If I'm making a journey of 100 miles, it better be worthwhile, walking 100 miles. So anyway, these Pharisees had come 100 miles to test Jesus and to try and trip him up. And they were observing him. And so they observed that the disciples weren't washing hands like they were. So it says this in verse 2, and some saw his disciples eating food with hands that were defiled, and that is unwashed. The Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they give their hands a ceremonial washing, holding to the tradition of the elders. When they come from the marketplace, they do not eat unless they wash, and they observe many other traditions, such as the washing of cups, pitchers, and kettles, and even the New King James says couches, like where they were sitting. So anyway, back then they did a lot of ceremonial washing. Today, if I go to a job, I'm washing my hands, but especially after I get done with a job, we do carpet cleaning and some restoration stuff. And some of the restoration stuff that we get into is really icky. It might be a sewage leak or mold. And so after I'm done with that, it's like I come back and I just want to take a shower. It's not, hand sanitizer is not going to do the trick, okay, when I get done from a job like that. But most times when I'm done with the carpet cleaning job, I'll get in the truck, in this day and age, take off the mask, take off the rubber gloves, and then I don't have running water in the truck, so I use some hand sanitizer and clean myself up. And I might get a burger or something on the way home, use some more hand sanitizer, okay? I'm not washing completely after doing that. At home here, when we got soap, and I buy by the gallons, the liquid soap for us and the kids to wash their hands. But back then, it wasn't, when they're talking about this, they're not talking about just washing hands like we would normally do. It was a ceremony, okay? So it was a big thing where they had water poured on them, and then it would run from the fingertips down to the elbow, and then to make sure it went the other way, then they would have water poured on them, and from the elbow to the fingertips, all a big show, okay? So when you go to get surgery, you're probably not seeing what the surgeons are doing, but when the surgeons, before they come in, hands need to be cleaned. So they spend a lot of time washing their hands, getting underneath their fingernails, all that. They spend a lot of time cleaning, okay? And that's the way the Pharisees were doing. But they were doing it as a show thing, like, look at me, I'm getting everything clean, okay? And they would do this like once in the morning, and that was okay if they stayed home and they didn't come in contact with anybody. But if they went out to any place like to the market and came in contact with other people, then they had to do it all over again, okay? Especially if you ran into Gentiles. Then it was like, oh no, we got to wash all over again, okay? So, I'll wash in the morning, and then I might use hand sanitizer if there's not water available later on throughout the day. But these guys were like, hey, you got to wash your hands completely because you ran into a Gentile. So that's what was happening here, is they were all upset because the disciples weren't washing their hands like they were, okay? These were guidelines that were given by Moses about washing your hands when you go into the temple and stuff, the Levites and stuff. But the religious leaders had carried this and they had made it a tradition. And the Bible doesn't say you must wash your hands the way they were doing it, the thorough and the showiness and everything. But that was the way they were doing it. It was their tradition. And they were holding that everyone needed to follow that tradition of the holy washing like that. But anyway, picture in your mind for me, the disciples were like, before they ate, they didn't have hand sanitizer, but they would have at that day. They would have grabbed some hand sanitizer, wiped their hands, we're good to go, okay? But the Pharisees were like, what? You needed to use the soap. You needed to, sing happy birthday as you were washing your hands, and have it go long enough. It needed to be water that was, 110 degrees and so forth to get everything clean. But the disciples were like, well, we're using hand sanitizer, and they didn't care. They saw the Pharisees there, but they didn't care. So let's see what happens here. Verse 4. And when they were at the marketplace too, that's when they were like, if they bought stuff, the kettles and all that stuff, then they were like, oh, we got to wash all that stuff too, because it came from Gentiles, all right? So that's all that stuff there, the kettles and stuff they were washing. Verse 5, so the Pharisees and teachers of the law asked Jesus, why don't your disciples live according to the tradition of the elders instead of eating their food with defiled hands? They're making it sound like these guys, just committed murder here. He replied, Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you hypocrites, as it is written. Hypocrites is a word that's used, it was used back in that day to describe an actor. An actor is someone who acts like another person. It isn't really that person. And so these guys, he called them hypocrites. You're acting like you're followers of God, but you're not. You're not following God. You act like it is, you do, but you're not following God. Verse 6, he replied, Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you hypocrites. As it is written, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules. That's a key thing for today, is what Jesus is going back to Isaiah. And the NIV says, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules. I have the New Living, which also, I actually like the way it says it. This is a paraphrase, naturally. And it says this from Isaiah, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me, much like the NIV. But here's where it's different. Their worship is a farce. I like that. Their worship is a farce. For they teach man-made ideas as commands from God. Okay? They're teaching rules made by man it came from God. And you've heard that saying, cleanliness is next to godliness. Where does it say that in the Bible? It doesn't say that any place in the Bible, but we've taken that. I even saw it on a thing of soap this week that I picked up. Cleanliness is next to godliness. No, the Bible never says that, okay? But these rules that man made, they're taken and making them that it's got to be from God. Verse 8, you have let go of the commands of God and you are holding on to human traditions. And he continued, you have a fine way of setting aside the commands of God in order to observe your own traditions. Now he's coming back at them. He's like, you know what? You guys are like wacko, and you're even wrong about this stuff. Verse 10, for Moses said, honor your father and your mother, and anyone who curses their father or mother is to be put to death. Okay, so that's one of the 10 commandments, honor your father and mother, and anyone who curses their mother and father is to be put to death. That was a command given by Moses, okay, and they were to be stoned. So that's verse 10. But verse 11, but you say that if anyone declares that what might have been used to help their father or mother is Corban, that is devoted to God, then you no longer let them do anything for their father or mother. Thus you nullify the Word of God by your tradition that you have handed down, and you do many things like that. When we read through that last section, we kind of breeze through it and we go, oh yeah. But Corban was a vow that the people took, and it was a religious vow that you took, and you kind of dedicated everything you had to God for God's service. You can still use it, So let's say for me, I dedicate my business to God, and I would be part of the Jewish religious system. I would say, this business is all God's, okay? Now, what would happen is this, and so the religious leaders would say, okay, it can only be used for religious purposes and to help to, for you to get wealthy and stuff too, of course. But what if my parents needed medical care, and they needed, let's say my dad needed to go to the nursing home and go to rehab for a while. And he said, Todd, man, I need some money to help, pay for the rehabilitation costs and nursing home and stuff like that. And I'd go, gee, Dad, sorry, I can't. Everything I have is Corban. It's dedicated to God. I can't use it for that. And that's what the religious leaders were saying. Oh, no, you can't use it, to help take care of your parents. And that's when Jesus went off the handle. He was like, the commandments clearly say to take care of your parents and honor your parents. And then you've made up this other stuff, these vows, to nullify that. That's crazy, okay? And so the bottom line from all this today is watch out for the religious things that you might do that you've put higher than what God actually said. There's some things that, let me see if I can pull it up here. So God might say stuff similar to this, and some of the stuff I'm getting from David Guzik. They might say, we attend church, and this is taken from Isaiah here. You attend church, but your heart is far from me. Okay, many Christians attend church, but there's quite a few Christians or people that attend church, but their heart is far from the ways of God. Okay, going to church doesn't make you a Christian. And God might go, you read your Bibles, but your heart is far from me. All right. You might pray eloquently, have this fancy prayer, oh God of Rehoboam, Jeroboam, and all the other Boam brothers, and have this eloquent prayer, but your heart is far from God. You might contribute a lot of money, but your heart is far from God. You might do a ministry, okay, something fancy, and your name is up there in the Todd ministry to the poor, but your heart is far from God. You might love to sing. You might be, a great Christian singer, but your heart is far from God. You might talk to others about Jesus, but deep down inside, your heart is far from God. So today, examine your heart. Are you walking with God? Are you truly following God? And make sure you're not just following religious rules. Religious rules is not a relationship with God. A relationship with God starts in here. So, Lord's blessing to you. Thanks for watching, and we will continue our journey through the book of Mark tomorrow. See you then.